So I had to do this episode because I said I'm gonna check what's up with Hirt and what he's planning. Um, and apparently he has been defending Benjamin Netanyahu, and I think this is actually a very good strategy as somebody that is in any political public position right now, and those who know. Okay, I think enough said. Like, we understand why is he doing that, but let's take a look at the composite and synastry. And when it comes to the synastry, first of all, Benjamin Netanyahu had a Rahu return with the Rahu Aries and the Rahu Aries eclipses. And so he became an even bigger figure. I suspect there is an Aries Rahu for Benjamin Netanyahu, and Aries is the excluded one. And so Hirt brings Moon and Jupiter to Bibi's Rahu. So that is, first of all, very benefic and expansive. Moon Rahu, I actually have Moon Rahu with Hirt, which is a very supportive aspect. It's an emotionally supportive aspect. If it's well aspected, it can get the situation where people are mutually supportive of each other. And it's more about holding space or just caring, okay? And the Jupiter Rahu is very expansive. It is very optimistic. Rahu makes things bigger, and Jupiter is about making things bigger. So they may have. I'm not saying they have like a giant dream, or they may increase each other's opportunities. I think what Wilders is very able to see is the place of being secluded, and he has Moon Jupiter with Aries, so co-present in the same sign. So he's able to see how, for example, Bibi is being treated relatively to other leaders that do the same thing as he does unfairly. And he's very likely also able to see himself in this position quite easily. So particularly if he would be prime minister. And the Moon Rahu is one key aspect of this support. Then there is a Mars Sun conjunction. And Mars Sun conjunction is one of the most powerful things you can have in the chart. It's very fiery. I have that with Peter. And it is, AstroSeek even writes that as twin flames. It's basically they're able to see each other's light. It can bring competitiveness or kind of like, it is a hard aspect. But other than that, is people are able to, it's kind of like, I see you. I see the struggle you're going through. I see your shine. I see what you're trying to bring to the world. And that can be a very invigorating aspect where both can see what the person, let's say if Benjamin Netanyahu is going through character assassination more so than simply because it's comfortable to point the finger of blame at a person rather than at the structure, then Wilders is able to strategize through that or navigate through that, especially if Bibi needs somebody at the ICC, which he does. I'm not saying Wilders at the ICC, but Mars is strategy and Libra is justice, and Mars conjuncting Spica. Okay. Spica is eloquence, it's fair trade. And you think about the way sometimes you need deception to get something to be fair. That's something that also is a topic of eloquence. Okay, why would you need eloquence to be fair? Okay. You think about the people who cannot have that eloquence or cannot speak for themselves or fend for themselves and so on. And you think about the people that are secluded, that are, think about the Aries people, okay, the bringers of chaos. And they are so because they have been marginalized and secluded. So this is, again, it doesn't mean that the person is a saint, and it doesn't mean that he is a monster. it means that they're not more saint or monster than literally anyone around them. And that's something we need to take into account. Now, the pitfall about Mars' sun, it can be character assassination. So it can bring conflicts to the sun person. But it's also denotating of collect twin flames, okay? And I don't mean that on a romantic level. I mean that on like two fiery placements that are very close to each other. And so what I'm more concerned about is Saturn, or maybe I'm biased because Saturn is conjuncting the sun of Wilders. Saturn is maybe conjuncting the sun of Wilders, which also is Venus and is Pluto, and to a looser extent his Uranus. And that is not pretty looking. Saturn brings restriction. So Mars is kind of like, Mars Sun can be arguing, but they all in all see each other. Saturn Sun can bring restriction. So it feels like that the warm support of Wilders with this aspect can meet tremendous requirement to the tremendous criticism, okay, to his character that is may or may not be just, okay? So that is something that I do see. When I go to the composite, I see Saturn with Rahu. One of the things that I don't like about seeing Saturn with Rahu is it is a very karmic relation, okay? And one of the reasons I don't like seeing Saturn with Rahu is that's just, Rahu is about expansion. Saturn does rule Rahu, okay? But Saturn with Rahu is something that either they're destined to end the relationship, or it brings in a sort of like restriction on each other's life path. So it's a karmic one. They very likely that there are eclipses involved. I don't understand so much the energy that's happening right now. I would need to tap into that. What's happened? What's wrong? Anyway, yeah. So I don't know. I take it back from saying Mars conjuncting Sun is character assassination, because that's more like the twin flames. So I don't understand. Anyway, the composite. So I don't like this Saturn Rahu conjunction. They may be fatally having to separate in order to pursue their life paths. Okay, this composite where it's going is Saturnian, is restrictive for the connection. So that is delays, restriction, depth. I'm not saying death because it's not, it's on degree 1, but I would prefer something else with Rahu. Okay, it's kind of like more like a Venus and Jupiter. So in the synastry we do have that. We do have Rahu coming to Wilders, Jupiter, and Moon, and so I guess Wilders is offering his emotional support, but I don't know if that would be met with such grace, and there can be criticism coming from Bibi's side, and that Saturn shows up in the composite again with Rahu. So I think that when it comes to like ICC, war crimes, crimes against humanity, like some other strategy would be needed. I said what I said about expandable children and looking at things from a bigger frame. I mean, if I look at what my argument with Peter was, okay, it's dead, but it's kind of like around Deming and looking at the fact that when we look at it as a global structure of intelligence that grow children from torture and nobody comes to save them, talking about that structure, exposing that structure can bring justice to both Bibi and Wilders and anyone, okay, any one of the bunch. But here it's through Spica. And with Spica, what the beauty about the fixed star is that you don't have to have anything denoting for that to use that, okay? Like if you have a talisman, and they're gonna need that for the ICC, I think that's all of them. They're gonna need that for the ICC. And I think this would be a good time to speak about expendable children. I have one of the reasons that I kind of like withdrew when it came to I don't know, let's just put it that way. When it came to expendable children, I understand that that is needed to change the situation. And I understand that if anyway it's going south, okay, talking about that, like we have Lars' testimony, we have witnesses that would support a testimony about these dead camps. And I think the only argument in favor of anybody facing the ICC right now, and it's a giant, and I think when it comes to both Netherlands, Israel, everybody being involved, it's a giant, okay? But Chiron is stationing direct on Jupiter for Wilders, and it is around Rahu for Benjamin Netanyahu. So I think that I think, and it's not too far from their Aries, and Aries is now transiting Andromeda, so Andromeda could be really assisting to reconcile the irreconcilable. I said it a long time ago, and I think that this could be a step that's very, very needed. You would have to get that not censored. You'd have to get that out to the crowd and not censored. I know that Wilders has been, canceled multiple times, and it's not like anybody wants to talk to Bibi right now. Working with Spica, working with Andromeda can assist. I'd definitely be sharing on the platforms. Like just anything that these folks say about this, I definitely will be sharing that on my platforms, but that's very humble. What else? Because you have to understand, when it comes to these death camps, like all the politicians been through that, and it's everything that you can imagine, okay? Both as victims and as perpetrators. That's why we see what we see. And if anyway it's going south, then that needs to be whistleblowed by one like if you get a couple of visible business people, leaders to go and open that topic, that's the only way out that I see from what's coming, okay? And when we talk about betrayal based cults, it ain't like they're not gonna do something because they're not trust based cults, they're betrayal based cults. So that is kind of what jumped into mind. The composite looks not unfavorable. There's a T-square going on there. I don't quite remember what that T-square was. On a human level, I do see why Wilders is standing for Bibi. And I also think that, the character, like, it's not a character assassination, because it's not like these people did not do these things, but the thing is that when we point the fire at a person rather than at the structure, then what's happening is that the persons are rejuvenated, but the structure stands. And that structure is how you got these people to do what they do. So this is what I have to say about that. I also think that discussing the effects of such torture and the mind control, and like I said, I offered for the technology, you have to have just sensors to waves that we do have, can prove beyond reasonable doubt if there was mind programming, if there was mind control. Like that's the thing that would be best coming out. Because like if that's going south, and with the ICC, it's going south, okay? If it's not with the ICC, then there is a reason why the Latin inscription on the justice, the Supreme Court in Netherlands, they say that where the verdict says, where the juristic decision fails, violence ensues. And this is, I would be very saddened to see that this is what things would be about, rather than tending to what created those dumbfuckeries that we see in the world. But I have to admit, where my points of optimism, first of all, Chiron is going direct next to Bibi's chart and next to Wheeler's chart. Wheeler's has a Jupiter right on the degree, almost 1 degree away, I think, from where Chiron is stationed indirect. Yeah, Bibi has a Rahu in the vicinity. So I think that is allowing us to tend to a wound, to reconcile a wound around basically identity. If you think about the MK Ultra mind control, and that's not an easy thing to talk about, right? We think about sovereignty and decision making and so on, but it's also tending to that wound can be a path to change the notion of how entire world sees politics, and begin to deal with that before it becomes, as Peter said, North Korea all over the world, okay? Because that's the WHO. That's the WHO. And it's about mind control and creating puppets through these tortures and then controlling them through mind control, eliminating the sites. They have been blocking, there has been a blockade on the kidnapped people, where remote viewers know where the kidnapped people are, and they still, the army doesn't agree to do any military operation based on this knowledge. They don't agree to speak with remote viewers, and the people will have to take it into their hands. But they do remote view and target people. Idonevo, yes, but not only. Or Itamar not only. And they do remote view and target people and do mind control and kidnap people. So that is, where Peter died, and the entire foundation cannot receive tips from remote viewers. And I seen Kelly talking about this. She said it's absolutely okay to be like a channeler or an astrologer. It's just that we receive only concrete tips. And so there's just something going on, because since forever we've been using remote viewing to locate missing people and solve murder cases. That has changed is something the world needs to be aware of. and then they start to target people for political assassination, okay, using that, and to create that, they don't create it naturally, they create that with torture and the mind control, and that is what the WHO is about, okay? They, under the guise of ailment, they say, oh, electro this, electro that, they electrocute people, they rape people, and then they mind control people, and you're recruited to do both supposedly light things and incredibly dark things, and that's how it goes. And I think the only way, and there are people that are in charge of you looking one way or another, or they tell you that you're going to be receiving this or receiving that, or that's going to happen, and then that's a betrayal cult. And they keep torturing people for that, to preserve that mind control. And so I was talking about the possibility for invasion for Netherlands. I don't have ascendant of Wilders, and if I have assumption, if a person doesn't expose it publicly, I will not say it. And that could be like interception of something. But Gemini. Let's just say if there would be invasion for Netherlands, for Wilders, there's something that's going to be publicly known. Okay, so it's not a good option. Okay, and there's no amount of support of Bibi that can actually computate within a betrayal cult. Now the sun is in Gemini. Like he could be experiencing a very public betrayal, if what I assume is true. And unfortunately, one of the things that Netanyahu is kind of known in is saying one thing and doing another. And like it's just true about him, okay? This is not more or less malefic than others, but that's just something that we know about him. Wilders maybe done that once to Rutte, but Rutte kind of did it to himself, He kind of, not in a bad way. He was calculated decision to be not agreeing suddenly on something and then going to Navo, okay? But yes, the silent R is double this time. But the thing is that the calculated moves of politicians in the age of Pluto Aquarius is like we're not in Capricorn. Okay, it's kind of like this. We're not in Texas anymore. Kansas, Texas. Why do I say Texas? I know why I say Texas. Okay, there's a lot going on with Texas. I would need to do a chart, but somebody's building a forest in Texas, so of course it's gonna change things. But we're not in Kansas anymore in the sense that this is not Pluto Capricorn. It's not Pluto, it's sidereally in Capricorn, it's not tropically in Capricorn. That is the modus operandi of the way the political system has been navigating itself in Capricorn is a no-go now. There's maneuvers that it doesn't matter, okay? But getting at the topic of the cult, the expendable children, those things that they killed Peter for beginning to speak about them, which is WHO, That's the only way out of the ICC, even if they place that in Singapore or something like that. So, and it's not the ICC because we are at the court of the people. Okay, Mars is going to oppose Pluto from the court of the people. Oh, I wanted to say there's a Corvan out with they have Saturn square Pluto in the composite, which is, oh my God, guys, separate. I'm gonna say it outright. I took a break from Wilders because I have it in the composite with him. Our composite looks like a world war, and I'm like, hey, we met around the world war, but, but we haven't physically met, of course. But I'm not that important. But the thing is, the Pluto square Saturn, that's the Corvan out. That's kind of like, I've been having that with my mom, with Donevo, and like the square is a crisis where both of them could feel like the victim of. And I want to, like, warm word, I don't know Bibi on that level, but a warm word to hear it. Don't expect Bibi to be able to be there for you. Okay? I was not expecting for you to be able to be there for me with what I deal with as a citizen, because you're like in jail and stuff, and with quite a bit of a life risk, but don't expect Bibi to be able to be there for you. He might even be feeling victimized by you. So don't be like, that Saturn thing is real. Okay, there's like a wall. There's the friction between how you're going through the crisis together. Okay, there's like a friction where you both are meant to change the system, change the structure. Okay, but it's through a crisis. If I take it back from the chart of me, let's say Idonevo, then he was the person that tried to make me a sexpionage to assassinate Peter. And then when it didn't work, tried to go for his son. Okay? and torture me when it backfired, but he's like, you torture me anyway, it doesn't matter. But the thing is, that's the betrayal court. And then there's Vatmal. Minut. As father as son, my God. And then there is and then there's a lot of people that love attention. And then there is the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. Okay. And I have it with the generation of the born in the like late 80s, because they have Pluto next to my Saturn. But that is where, the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, it's able to survive, let's say, at the 29 crisis, okay? So that can give you ability to survive through strife where other people wouldn't, but the strife is real. So, and it's also about transforming structures. There can be really intense power struggles, because think about Saturn is what you fear, and Pluto is facing that. Okay? Okay. Okay? I can be thinking about a certain contour, and I'm like, hey, is that guy going against the WNGO, and then they're like speaking in favor of pedos, going back to society? And I'm like, okay? So the Corvan out between Bibi and Wilders is not supported by any Uranus moon. Okay, there is a moon Rahu, which could be replacement for that, because there's like emotional support, and they may even genuinely like each other. But you have to understand the Corvan out is real, and I would definitely not put all my eggs in that basket when it comes to, it goes, and it's very strange because I also have that. So that's a place where one could feel that the other person is like a jail for them, which is why I took 1,000 steps back. But the thing is that the only way I see out of this is really separation is important, but if I think about why the support is there to begin with, it is tending to the MK Ultra and expandable children thingy, and hey, it's not like it's a betrayal cult. So as crazy as it sounds, it might not be so crazy, but I am not feeling comfortable to say that with 100% because just look at the composite and I say, okay, there's just a lot of hard aspects here where that might not at all be possible. I don't see that connection between Libby and Wilders going anywhere but south. Let's be very honest about this. And I think that's a maneuver that has been playing out by global intelligence for years and years and years, and to frame a person rather than to denote at the structure. So while the synastry says that these two can survive, it's still meaning, and it's very karmic, it's very restrictive. You really have to ask yourself at this point why. Okay, when you see such an aspect in the composite, you're like, at this point why. That being said, the outer planets to inner planets, the way out is to tend to the structure that needs to be changed. Okay, I didn't wake up one day and decided to tend to MK Ultra that nobody dares to speak about, even the whistleblowers of whistleblowers like Julian Assange and so on. He denotes something like that, and he does the two that he has to do there, and he also try to force me to do the two. By the way, in 2017, I posted a picture with the two, and that was like a peace sign. I didn't intend that in a double agent or something like that. So I just didn't know about the sign, so I made it like that because that was like the sign of the whistleblowers, and that's what I knew. Okay, I was just like a little girl. And then when Water Expands Upon Cooling, the first season ended, then I was talking about how people would marry women from another origin and then beat them on purpose, and that there was a murder case that could have been associated with that. And then I was kind of like guided to do the two. I was giving a shout out to Wilders because that was the orange game and he was putting thunder. So yeah. And then I was supposed to do the two thingy. So I do not consent, and I never consented to be any double agent, any dumbfuckery, any stuff like that. And I think that the way to deal with Saturn-Pluto aspects is to change structures. And focus on that changing of structures. Okay. That's the thing. And it brings in a crisis, and you have to deal with that. And that's what this aspect is about. Okay, if I think about the generation that has that with me in a conjunction, in Scorpios, if you think about satanic ritual abuse and sexpionage, or the use of sexual energy for satanic abuse and stuff like that, and maybe in exposing that. So this generation maybe caused me to expose that even further. But as I expose that, it's not like these people didn't have to do it as well, okay? I'm not talking about being sexpionage, I'm talking about programming people to be sexpionage, which entails rape, torture, and they sometimes have to film that. So I can jab at them, and that they probably jabbed at people as well. But it's also the real genuine thing that to defend you, or to defend you from political assassination, I need to expose stuff that you very likely have been doing. Okay, structurally, it's impossible that you haven't been doing. Um, and that structure needs to change. This, I think, is why Wilders is defending Bibi and is correct strategically, because they're being put in the same position, especially if there's going to be an invasion to Netherlands. And I'm not talking about the Ajax, okay? I'm not talking about the red on red. But it's a structure that needs to change, and to have that happen, we need to whistleblow on that structure. Okay, so the people that have been inside the cult also need to whistleblow on that structure. And all the scary things, you see that they're happening anyway, right? So I know that it's not only easier said than done, but what I say might be practically impossible, or might seem impossible. But I also understand that where it's going right now is not looking pretty. And none of them, from none of the visibles, okay, for anyone, and they already know it. I mean, with Rutte, they already made an AI that replaces Mark Rutte. What do you think would Mark Rutte be? Okay, you will be marketed if you sit in a bunker in Albania, fucking children. But I said what I said. That's what you will be marketed. That's the idea. You will be marketed, but you don't know, because if you take a look at what they did for the other side, for Julian Assange, then they torture him 5 years in Belmarsh, then they take him out to the sun, and then he looks swollen from the pills, and it looks like he's fat. No, the pills make you fat, because your intestines, that is autonomous muscles, are not operating well. So you find it difficult to poop and difficult to ingest food and to absorb food. And then they say, oh, look at the fat pig there with the suntan. It was all fake, it was all this. And then he has to sign an Espionage Act and say that there's nothing about Trump. Did they? This testimony, the Imagination podcast. And I'm not saying the Imagination podcast is not like that weird red cross with the thunder sign is weird, but the testimonies are real, and we have technology to affirm them. So it's all about talking about the structures, because none of the visibles they intend to have, a vacay. And that's why the structure needs to be exposed, because otherwise that's the only way I see out. Because if you take down the visibles, you didn't take down the invisibles. And if you use technology, you can see who mind controlled who, and most of the people that are visibles are handled by people that are invisibles. So that's something that would need to have a discussion, because political assassination after political assassination just doesn't solve the problem, and neither is, the guillotine or the ICC, which is the equivalent by now for the type of crimes that we're talking about. And it's not about defending, it's about, hey, if you want to solve the problem of perpetual world war and zombifying everybody, you need to tend to the problem, which is the core issue, and that is the Saturn Pluto. So the point is changing structures, not changing heads.